Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The Hollow Herd. Let the Shadows Speak. Part 1. The Cold Welcome. The road had vanished 20 minutes ago. Not literally, it was still there, winding like a dead snake through the pines, but whatever the map had called it, this wasn't a road anymore. Just dirt, ruts, and the occasional spray of gravel that clattered beneath the tires of Harper's aging Tacoma. "This is normal," she said, glancing over from the driver's seat. I grunted, watching as the tree line pressed closer, as if it had decided the forest was done letting us pass. The sky overhead was a hazy steel gray, flat and cold and indifferent. Harper smiled at my silence. "Still think meeting my dad was a better idea than brunch in Bozeman?" "No," I said, and that made her laugh. I couldn't help but smile, despite the growing knot in my gut. She was always able to pull that out of me, smiles I didn't think I had left. We'd been dating for nearly 2 years. I'd met her college friends, her roommates, even her thesis advisor, but never her family. "They're not weird," she'd said, brushing my hair back one night while we shared a bottle of wine on my porch in Missoula. "Just private. Especially my dad. He doesn't talk much, but he's got a good heart." That conversation had led to this road, this trip, this decision to spend a long weekend with her parents in a log house buried in the Bitterroot Mountains, an hour from the nearest paved anything. And as the truck rattled over a shallow creek and up a steep incline, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. The cabin appeared like something summoned from a dream. Wide-planked, low-roofed, partially hidden beneath hanging boughs of pine. Smoke trickled from the metal chimney. The front porch sagged slightly at the middle. A wooden carving of a bear stood on one end, its face split in a grin that was more menacing than friendly. Harper turned off the ignition. "We're here." The forest around us said otherwise. It didn't feel like we'd arrived anywhere. More like we'd been swallowed by something ancient, something indifferent to human schedules or holidays. I grabbed our bags from the back of the truck. She walked up the creaking steps ahead of me and knocked on the front door 3 times. No answer. Then the lock clicked. The door opened. I met the eyes of a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same dark wood as the cabin. Harper's father was tall, thick-shouldered, with a silvering beard and sun-scorched skin. His eyes were pale, not blue, not gray, just pale like ice that hadn't finished forming. He wore a canvas jacket that looked older than I was. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. Harper didn't seem to mind. She hugged him tightly. "Hi, Dad." He gave her a one-arm squeeze and stepped aside to let us in. The interior was warmer than expected. Cedar walls, stone fireplace, worn rugs. A few antlers hung above the doorways. A wind chime made of old tools clinked softly in the draft. I stood awkwardly in the middle of the living room. "Hi, I know who you are," her father said without looking at me. His voice was gravel, soaked in whiskey. Before I could respond, a woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Diane, Harper's mother, was a contradiction to the man beside her. Shorter, rounder, with soft eyes and a warm smile that almost made me forget how cold the air felt outside. She hugged me, too tightly. "You're thinner than she said," Diane chuckled. "We'll fix that." Dinner was deer stew, thick and peppery. Diane made conversation, questions about my job, my parents, how I liked the mountains. Harper joined in, light and easy, as if we were at a brunch spot downtown. Her father, Vernon, said almost nothing. He sat at the far end of the table, his eyes always drifting toward the dark windows, as if he expected something to knock. Once I caught him muttering under his breath, barely audible over the clink of spoons. Harper nudged me. "He always listens at night," she whispered. "Don't worry. I try not to." That night, I woke around 1:30 a.m. No dreams, just the sense that something had shifted, pressure in the air, like the hush before thunder. Harper was asleep, mouth slightly open, her arm over my chest. I slid out of bed gently, careful not to wake her, and tiptoed down the stairs. I hadn't expected to find Vernon sitting in the living room. He was in the same position he'd been at dinner, upright, rigid, but this time with a rifle balanced across his lap. A cigarette burned in the ashtray beside him, untouched. He didn't turn as I approached. I just, needed water, I murmured. He raised one finger to his lips, not looking at me, not blinking. I followed his gaze to the window. It was dark, deeper than natural. I saw no stars, no trees, just black. I heard them, he said. His voice was almost reverent, low to the ground, breathing heavy, watching. Something inside me curled up tight. Wolves. His lip twitched, not quite a smile. Not anymore. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat upright in bed, listening to the floor creak downstairs, wondering if it was Vernon shifting in his chair, or was something else shifting outside. By morning, the sky had clouded over. Breakfast was silent. I pushed scrambled eggs around my plate. Vernon sat across from me, staring. Then he stood, walked into the hallway, and returned with 2 rifles. He set one in front of me. "You're coming," he said. "We leave in 10. Harper looked thrilled. He never asks anyone to go with him. Ever. I didn't know whether to feel honored or alarmed. My gut said the second. Part 2. The silence in the pines. The rifle felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't the weight. It was the fact that I had no business holding a gun in the first place, especially not following a man like Vernon into the woods. He didn't say a word as we crossed the narrow road and stepped into the trees. The world behind us, the cabin, the truck, Harper, disappeared in seconds. The forest swallowed us like a mouth. It was quiet, not serene quiet, not peaceful, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums until you wonder if you've gone deaf. Vernon moved like a ghost. Despite his broad frame and thick boots, he barely rustled a leaf. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. His breath didn't fog in the air like mine did. I stumbled twice, just trying to keep up, brushing branches away from my face as pine needles bit into my jacket. He finally stopped near a shallow ridge where the moss gave way to cracked stone. "You stay behind me," he said without turning. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. He scanned the tree lean, then knelt and touched the soil. "Tracks," he muttered. I squinted. "Deer." He didn't answer. We hiked deeper. The forest here felt wrong. Too symmetrical. Too still. The trees stood like soldiers, bark stripped in long vertical gouges. Vernon noticed them too. His eyes narrowed. At one point, we came across a shattered elk carcass. Or what was left of one. The rib cage had been pulled open like a flower. No insects. No smell. Something had eaten clean through it, bone and all. Vernon crouched beside it, ran 2 fingers through the blood-soaked pine needles. "Wasn't a bear," he said finally. Then he stood and kept walking. The further in we went, the more I felt the pressure. Not fear exactly, though that came later, but awareness. Like the trees themselves were watching, judging. No bird song, no squirrel chatter, no wind. Just the subtle tick-tick of my boot laces tapping the stock of the rifle as I walked. We climbed a small rise, and Vernon stopped again. He raised a hand. I froze. There, through the trees, moved a figure. 4-legged, graceful, a white-tailed deer, picking its way between patches of rotting leaves. Vernon raised his rifle, then paused. He sniffed the air, and lowered the weapon. "We're not alone," he said. Something rippled through the brush to our left. I turned instinctively, lifting my rifle, heart hammering. I didn't see anything, just shadows. Then another rustle. Behind us. Vernon didn't move. He stood perfectly still, eyes darting from tree to tree. "They're testing the perimeter." I swallowed. "What are they?" "Not wolves." His voice was low, measured. "They walk like wolves. Hunt like them, but they remember faces. They don't just kill to eat." I wanted to ask more. "How do you know that?" But then we heard the first sound all day. A single howl. Not loud, not close, but not natural. Too long, too hollow. Like something imitating a howl, but getting the rhythm wrong. Vernon clicked off the safety on his rifle. Time to go. We turned back, but the trail had vanished. I swear we had come from the south, but now the trees all looked the same. The canopy above had closed in, dimming the light. Vernon knelt, sniffed the air again, then stood. They're hurting us. He didn't say who they were. He didn't have to. The next 15 minutes were a blur of sprinting through brush, ducking under low limbs, slipping on moss-covered stone. I kept hearing things, shapes flickering at the edges of my vision. Tall, fast, not natural. I tripped once, fell hard, and scraped my palms against frozen bark. Vernon hauled me up by the collar without a word. We didn't fire a shot. Not yet. They want to corner us first, he muttered, like they did with Reed. Who's Reed? I asked, breathless. He didn't answer. I got the sense Reed was dead. We emerged onto a clearing ringed with rocks and dead tree stumps. The center was scorched, charcoal and ash in a near-perfect circle. Vernon stopped cold. He lowered his rifle, then looked at me for the first time all day. They're not animals, he said. His voice had changed. It wasn't confident anymore. They're echoes of something that used to walk on two legs. Then the howling started again, closer, and then another voice, one that didn't belong to any creature I'd ever heard. It spoke from the trees, low and guttural, but unmistakably human in its cadence. Back to back little pigs. Vernon grabbed my shoulder and shoved me toward a fallen log. They're circling. Don't run unless I tell you. Something cracked in the brush 20 feet to our right. I raised my rifle, breath ragged. Something else moved behind us. A shape, too big to be a dog, too fluid to be a bear. Then the first one stepped into view. It looked like a wolf. If a wolf had stood upright too long and decided to stay that way. Its limbs were long, joints bent wrong, fur slick with mud and pine needles. Its eyes, small, golden, intelligent, locked onto mine and didn't blink. It grinned, a wide, toothy grin that split its face like a seam opening in old leather. Vernon fired first. The shot echoed through the trees. The thing vanished before it hit the ground. Not from the bullet, but from its own speed. 3 more shapes darted through the tree-line, low and fast, flankers. I fired at one without aiming, pure reflex. Missed. Vernon turned, shouted something, but a loud snarl drowned him out. One of the creatures launched itself from behind a stump. It collided with me before I could react. I hit the ground hard, my rifle skidding away. The creature loomed above me, black fur, ribs pushing against its skin, breath hot and sour. Its jaws open wide. I grabbed a rock, swung blindly. A sick crunch followed. It recoiled, shrieking in frustration. Blood sprayed from its snout. Vernon's next shot slammed into its side. It didn't die, but it ran. So did the others. The clearing emptied as fast as it had filled. I lay there, shaking, blood soaking through my sleeves. Vernon stood above me, panting. His flannel was torn across the chest, and something red dripped from his collarbone. "We need to move," he said. "Back to the house." He hesitated. "They'll follow, but not all the way." "How do you know?" He looked at me like I'd asked if fire was hot. "Because they like the chase." We limped through the trees, taking a longer route westward, looping around broken gullies and half-frozen streams. The forest didn't feel like it had let us go, just paused. The sun was low when the cabin finally appeared through the trees, its windows glowing amber in the fading light. We made it across the road just as the first howl rang out again. This one was closer. Vernon pushed me through the door and slammed it shut behind us. Then he bolted it, all 5 locks. Part 3, something at the door. The deadbolt clicked into place with a heavy clunk. Then Vernon turned and locked the other 4 latches, 2 steel sliders, a wooden beam brace, and a rusted hook near the bottom of the frame. It looked like something out of a frontier panic room. "They'll test the walls first," he muttered. I leaned against the entryway, gasping. My ribs felt cracked. Blood had dried on my sleeves and neck. "Harper," and her mother rushed from the kitchen. "Oh my God," Diane whispered when she saw me. What happened?" Vernon didn't answer. "Get the back sealed," he barked. "Now." Diane ran without arguing. Harper stayed beside me, clutching my wrist. "What happened out there?" I tried to speak. My mouth was dry. They weren't wolves. Vernon threw a towel at me, put pressure on that arm. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. I sat on the couch, still clutching the rifle. The cushion smelled like wood smoke and sweat. Harper wrapped my shoulder in gauze. Diane returned with a box of candles and a revolver that didn't look decorative. "Bathroom windows nailed shut," she said. "Back doors reinforced." Vernon nodded. "They'll come anyway." He walked to the front window, pulled the curtain back an inch, and stared into the dusk. Outside, the forest crouched in silence. But it wasn't natural silence. It was like the trees themselves were waiting. And then we heard it again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. 3 long, deliberate scratches against the front door. We froze. It stopped. Then a knock. Just one. Then 2 more. Slow. Heavy. Knock. 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 Vernon raised his rifle, stepping toward the door. The house was dead silent. No breathing, no whispers. Until he heard a voice. Low. Calm. Not quite human. "Little pigs," it said, "little pigs. Let's come in." The words were wrong. Like someone had stitched human syllables onto an animal throat. Not growling, but off. Vernon didn't flinch. "You're not welcome here," he growled back. "Take your herd and run before I put a bullet between your hollow fucking eyes." A silence followed. Then laughter. Not a joyful laugh. Not a wild one. But cold. Rising and falling like wind through a broken flute. Then something slammed against the door. Hard. The hinges groaned. Another slam. The beam across the door shuddered in its brackets. Harper yelped and backed away. Diane raised her revolver with both trembling hands. Vernon grabbed a second rifle from above the mantel and tossed it to me. "You know how to use that?" "No. You're gonna learn quick." The next impact cracked the center panel of the door. A clawed hand reached through, long, black-furred, fingers curled like spider legs. It grasped for the lock. Vernon stepped forward and fired point blank. The thing howled and yanked its arm back. But then came more thuds. On the back door, on the side windows, on the roof. One of them was climbing. I turned and saw Harper standing frozen by the fireplace. "Get upstairs," I told her. "Now." She didn't move. Diane grabbed her and yanked her toward the stairs. Something thudded against the second-floor window, shattering it. We all ran up the stairs. Glass crunched beneath our boots. In Harper's childhood bedroom, Vernon pulled a trunk away from the closet and threw it under the window. "They'll breach soon," he said. "We hold them here." "You said they wouldn't follow us home," I shouted. "You said they don't like going past the trees." Vernon's jaw tightened. They don't. But you saw their blood. You hurt one of them. My heart dropped. "So now it's personal?" He nodded grimly. "They can forgive a chase, but not a wound." The window exploded inward. One of the things, taller than any man, hunched and skeletal, crashed through with a shriek. It landed on the floor, limbs splayed at impossible angles, then sprang up faster than I could aim. Diane fired first, 2 shots center mass. It reeled, but kept coming. I raised the rifle, sighted down the scope, and fired once. Its jaw split open with a sound like breaking twigs, and it collapsed sideways, spasming on the floor. Vernon didn't waste a second. He drove a knife into its throat. The body twitched once, then lay still. But outside, more were coming. We heard the footsteps, too many, like a stampede in slow motion. Shuffling, clicking, sniffing. "They're circling the house," Harper whispered. Like a ritual. Vernon looked at her. "What did you say?" She swallowed. "I don't know. That's what it feels like." Diane sat down slowly, revolver in her lap. "It is a ritual." The room turned silent again. "You never told her?" Diane asked Vernon. He didn't answer, so she turned to Harper. "They don't just pick people. They remember lines. Bloodlines. Your great-grandfather broke the pact, and now they test us. Every generation. Harper's voice cracked. What pact? Vernon exhaled like a man dragging up a curse. We used to hunt them. They weren't always like this. They were spirits or beasts or something in between. Until old Nathan Voss shot one with iron. Said it stopped its heart. What happened then? I asked. The rest changed. Learned faster. Hid deeper. Then came back. And every time they did, one family bore the cost. He looked at Harper. Your family. Outside, the air filled with howling. This time it wasn't distant. It came from all sides. Harmonized. A chorus of hunger. Then the power went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Diane lit 2 candles from her coat pocket. We don't fight them. Not tonight. What are you saying? I asked. They don't kill quickly, she said. They wear you down. Isolate you. Haunt your dreams. The only way to survive is not to break. The walls creaked. A window shattered downstairs. Something padded across the tile. Vernon cocked his rifle again. Hold the stairs, he said. They want the girl. I stepped beside him. So did Harper. Then I have to get through all 3 of us. Diane gave me a strange look. Sad. Almost resigned. Another howl. Closer. Then footsteps on the 2nd floor. Too many. They weren't waiting anymore. Part 4, Blood Memory. They came through the walls like smoke. No breaking, no smashing, just sliding. From cracks in the plaster, from vents, from under the floorboards. Shadows with shape. Movement without noise. Vernon raised his rifle, aimed at the hallway. Boom! One shape dropped, twitching, but the rest surged forward like a wave. Fall back, he yelled. I grabbed Harper by the wrist and pulled her toward the attic ladder at the end of the hallway. Diane fired again, yelling something I couldn't hear over the screeching. A claw swiped inches from my neck as we reached the base of the attic. I turned, kicked the ladder loose, and scrambled upward as fast as I could. Harper came next, then Vernon. The hatch slammed shut. For now, the attic was small, beams, dust, a broken rocking chair. No windows, just darkness and the sounds below. Footsteps on wood, scraping nails on drywall, the steady inhale-exhale of something not quite animal. Diane didn't make it. We'd seen her pulled backward into the hallway, her scream muffled as one of the creatures fell atop her. Vernon leaned against the far wall, face unreadable. She knew, he said softly. We both did. The pact wouldn't last forever. What are they? Harper whispered. I need to understand. He stared into the shadows. They were the old kin, spirits that kept balance here. Once, they traded protection for blood. A cut thumb, a drop on the stone every winter. I shuddered. That changed. Your great-granddad, Harper, he gave them something he shouldn't, then tried to take it back. I turned toward Harper. Her eyes were wide but steady. She's marked, Vernon continued. Same birthmark as her grandmother. Same cold in the bones. That's why they want her. Harper looked at me. What happens if they get me? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small leather pouch from his coat. From it, he drew a blackened tooth, long and cracked. He handed it to me. When the time comes, break this in your mouth. If they corner you, what? You'll see. The attic thumped. Something was climbing. From inside the walls. We backed away from the hatch, rifles raised. Then a scraping sound, and a voice. Like before. Deep, guttural, human-like, but wrong in the vowels like it had learned to speak by mimicking echo. Daughter of Ash, it said. We remember your scent. Harper froze. We remember the offering your kin revoked. Give her. Open the door. The house will live. I step in front of her. No. A pause. Then laughter. And then silence. 10 minutes passed. No sound. No movement. Then my vision blurred. Everything slowed, and I dropped the black tooth. It rolled across the floor and struck my boot. I blinked, and suddenly I wasn't in the attic anymore. I was standing in snow. 100 years ago, or maybe more. I couldn't move, but I could see. There was a man, tall, broad, wearing pelts and old canvas. His eyes were Vernon's. His beard redder, younger. He was kneeling before a standing stone covered in runes, offering a bundle wrapped in hide. A child's hand poked from it. He whispered something. Blood dripped onto the snow. The forest watched. Then the runes burned red, and the man turned and walked away. But I didn't follow. I turned toward the trees and saw them, the herd, not fully formed, just vague outlines of what would become fur, bone, hunger. They watched the child's blood soak the altar, and they learned. I gasped and snapped back to reality, hands trembling. What the hell just happened? I whispered. Vernon looked at the broken tooth by my foot. It showed you. Showed me what? The blood memory. That's how they pass it on. Not with words, with witnessing. I backed away, heart pounding. You sacrificed a baby? He didn't answer. Harper looked horrified. That was Nathan Voss, Vernon said. He made the deal to save the valley from drought. But he didn't know what price he'd started. They don't want revenge, I said slowly. They want the pact. Vernon nodded. They want another soul. The roof cracked. A claw punched through. Then another. They were tearing through the ceiling like paper. I grabbed Harper and shoved her toward the far wall. Where's the crawl exit? There isn't one, Vernon said. Then we make one. I lifted the butt of my rifle and smashed it against the boards. Once. Twice. Then again. Wood splintered. Cold wind rushed in. Below us, trees. Far, far below. Harper peeked through the hole. We're above the slope. 30 feet down. Vernon looked at me. You jump, you don't come back. I'm not staying for round two. We tied bed sheets. Made a rope. They'd torn half the roof open when Vernon went first, landing hard but upright. I helped Harper next. As she climbed down, one of the herd dropped into the attic behind me. It didn't growl, just stared. Its face was wrong, stretched. Its eyes glowed faintly. Then it whispered something. He was never yours. I don't know what it meant. I didn't wait to ask. I jumped. We ran. Through snow. Through thorns. Through old ash and frozen roots. Behind us, the house collapsed in a roar of wood and fire. I didn't know who started the blaze. Maybe Diane. Maybe the herd. Maybe the pact itself didn't allow desecrated ground to stand. But I didn't look back. We reached the road near dawn. A ranger spotted us 3 hours later, limping down the highway with blood on our faces and ash on our clothes. They asked questions. We had no answers. Vernon disappeared. Harper and I stayed in a motel for 2 days, not sleeping. She traced a mark on her shoulder every night, the one that looked like an open I made of bone. We didn't talk about it until the hospital. When I woke up, she was gone. Just a note. They're not done. They never wanted revenge. Just memory. And memory lives in blood. Beneath the note was another blackened tooth, wrapped in wolfskin. Part 5. The Ones That Remember. I didn't see Harper again for 3 weeks. After the fire, the Rangers took me to a trauma center in Missoula. I had a dislocated shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, and a gash across my thigh that needed 26 stitches. They told me I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. I told them what I could. Vernon took me hunting. Something attacked us. We ran. The house caught fire. I didn't mention the teeth, or the voices, or the moment in the attic when a creature that didn't belong in any known species told my girlfriend she was marked. They discharged me into outpatient recovery. I stayed in a government-sponsored motel near the edge of town. Clean sheets, bland coffee, a view of the highway, and not much else. Every night, I'd dream of trees, but not normal trees. They leaned toward me like elbows. They remembered me. In the dreams, I'd see the stone again, the altar from the blood memory. But this time, I'd be standing in front of it, alone, and my hands would be wet, sometimes with blood, sometimes with fur, sometimes with teeth. On the 12th night, I woke up screaming. The mirror in the bathroom was cracked. That wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that something had carved a word into the condensation on the tile. Again, I didn't open the medicine cabinet that day. The next morning, a package arrived. No return address, no postage, wrapped in burlap. Inside, a VHS tape unlabeled, and a folded piece of lined notebook paper. If you see this, it means you remember. Don't fight it. You're part of it now. So was I. The handwriting was shaky, but I knew it. It was Vernon's. There was an old VCR in the motel lobby. I snuck in at 2 a.m. while the desk clerk slept with a podcast in his ears. I popped in the tape. The footage was grainy. Night vision. Someone, Vernon, probably, walking through the woods. Heavy breathing. A flashlight beam bouncing off trees. Then movement. A blur. A voice whispering back again. Same path. Same meat. Then an altar. The same stone I saw in the memory. Only now it was covered in black marks. Char hair. Symbols drawn in ash. A figure stood beside it. Tall. Barefoot. Antlers growing from its back. The tape ended with a scream. Vernon's. Then static. I started bleeding from the nose after I watched it. A trickle at first, then a slow stream. I leaned over the sink, heart pounding, and saw something in the mirror behind me. Not a figure. A shape. Just eyes. Amber. Watching from the fogged glass. I spun around. Nothing. But the scent of pine lingered in the room for the rest of the night. The next day, Harper called. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Her voice was flat. I can't come back yet. Where are you? Somewhere they can't follow. I think. Who are they? I asked. She didn't reply. But then she whispered. You still have the tooth? I reached under the mattress. Pulled out the pouch she left. Yes. You'll need it soon. For what? To remember fully. Then the line went dead. That night, I dreamed again. But it wasn't the woods this time. It was a clearing. Stone walls. Old. Cold. Echoing with sounds of teeth chattering in unison. And then I saw myself. Older. Covered in furs. Leading them. The herd. And I wasn't afraid. I was proud. When I woke up, the black tooth was in my mouth. I hadn't put it there. And there was something under my fingernails. Dark. Sticky. I turned on the sink. Scrubbed until the water ran clean. Then looked in the mirror. There were marks along my jaw. Raised. Almost like teeth had brushed me. From inside, the motel manager knocked an hour later. Said I had a visitor. I told him no. He said the man was already in the lobby. Said he was a friend of my father's. I didn't have a father. Not anymore. Still, I went down. The man sitting in the lobby looked wrong. His clothes were too clean, like they'd never touched real earth. His boots were bone white. When he smiled, I saw it. Too many teeth. More than a man should have. You've been dreaming, he said. It wasn't a question. They've chosen you now. There's no going back. I stood frozen. He slid something across the table. A stone, like the altar, except small, carved, with my initials etched into the underside. I don't want this, I said. He smiled wider. They don't care what you want. Then he was gone. Just gone. The motel door hadn't even opened. That night, I took the stone outside. Buried it 6 feet down in a field behind the gas station. Poured lighter fluid over the dirt. Burned sage. Prayed to something I didn't believe in. When I went back inside, the stone was sitting on my pillow. Dry. Clean. Smiling. Part 6, The Pactkeeper. I left Montana 6 months ago. Packed what little I had into the back of a rusting sedan and drove east until the trees no longer whisper my name. Or so I thought. I changed cities, changed phones, grew a beard. I stopped sleeping near open windows. I kept the lights on at night. And still, they found me. Not with claws, not with eyes glowing in the dark, but with memories, dreams that bled into daylight, moments that didn't belong to me. Children weeping in snow, stones bleeding black, fathers kneeling with knives they didn't want to use. And always in the background, the herd, watching, waiting, silent, until I woke one night with blood in my mouth and realized the tooth was gone. I searched the drawer, then the floor, then under the bed. Nothing, just a faint smear on the pillow, like it had dissolved or been used. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror for an hour that morning. Not out of vanity, out of fear. Would I see the amber in my eyes? Would I recognize when it finally happened? I didn't know. but I felt it. The change. Not sudden, not monstrous, just subtle shifts. The sound of someone walking behind me when I was alone. The ability to sense what was coming before it arrived. Cold hands, even in July. I stopped calling friends. I stopped trying to explain. They would never understand. Because memory isn't a story. It's a sickness. One morning, a package arrived. No return address. Wrapped in bark and sinew. Inside, a photo. Faded. 1970s. A man standing in front of a log cabin. Same stone altar behind him. Same forest. The man wore a coat I'd seen before. Vernon's. On the back of the photo, the blood remembers. The pact remains. I knew what I had to do. Not because anyone told me. Because it was time. Somehow I knew the place. Not the cabin. Not the altar. A different site. Further north. Deeper. Older. A trail known only through scent and sound. The kind of path you don't walk, you inherit. I drove for 2 days. Left the car on the roadside. Walked the rest. At twilight, I reached the clearing. A stone circle stood in the center, cracked and leaning. No names. No symbols. Just time. And waiting. The herd was already there. They did not howl. They did not speak. They stood, dozens of them, in the mist, cloaked in branches and breath. Not all wore fur. Some wore faces. Borrowed, stolen, remembered. One looked like Harper. One looked like Diane. One looked like me. They parted as I entered. No growls. No threats. Just reverence. The stone in the center was warm. I placed my palm on it. It pulsed, the way flesh does when stitched too tight. The circle closed around me, and they began to chant, but not in words, in thought, in shared memory. And suddenly, I saw everything. I saw the first offering, a boy given willingly to the ash. I saw the broken pact, Nathan Voss's betrayal, his fear, his gun. I saw the retribution, villages emptied overnight, children missing from cribs, trails that ended in pools of teeth. I saw generations running, thinking they were free. I saw them all return, in time, because memory is not erased. It waits. And now, it was my turn. They placed something in my hand. Not a tooth. A shard of antler, burned black, smooth on one end, rough and bloody on the other. The sign of a keeper. Not one of them. Not fully, but no longer human either. A vessel. A voice. A threshold. I did not scream. I did not resist. I simply knelt and remembered. The forest accepted me. Not with joy, but with inevitability. The way the ocean accepts a stone. The way rot accepts the dead. I was not chosen. I was not special. I was simply next. Now I walk the borderlines. Between towns. Between dreams. I visit people who don't remember me. People who shouldn't. I leave tokens under their porches. Bundles of sage. Teeth wrapped in bark. Notes written in soot. Sometimes they forget me the next morning. Sometimes they dream of me forever. I never stay long. Only long enough to plant the seed. To stir the dust. To whisper just once before vanishing. We remember. And then I move on. Journal entry. November 12th, 2024. Found a child tonight. Alone by the river. Said her parents disappeared into the trees. She wasn't afraid. Said she dreamed of a tall man with a burned hand who told her stories through the walls. She didn't cry. She laughed. Her eyes weren't brown anymore. I gave her the shard. She asked what it meant. I said, "It means you won't forget." And she smiled. They're already whispering her name. It won't be long now. The pact holds. Memory lives. We endure.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.